Hello everyone, welcome back to Spilling the Tea Podcast with Haylin and Kiki.
And this is episode 13.
Cheers to episode 13.
Cheers! I cannot believe this is episode 13 and we still have not gotten a sponsorship from Olipop. How are you, bestie?
I'm doing good, how are you?
I'm doing good.
We're really out
busy.
here.
Staying busy, but I'm doing good. What are we talking about today?
I'm excited to talk about how to actually disclose your child being transgender or LGBT to extended family and friends.
Oh my gosh, yes. Can we please talk more about that? Because I feel like there is like a taboo around it, when in reality it's just like, just rip the curtain, rip the Band-Aid, let everyone know who your kiddo really is or who you really are, you know?
And I think it's a lot easier said than done.
Absolutely.
I do think that I love Kiki's enthusiasm and also positivity, because without it, it's hard to change and move, right? And I think that it's so important for us to look at our own lives, like in our own personal life. How was it for you in terms of disclosing?
Okay, so I'm cisgender, very boring. I don't know why I chose to be that way. But I think that my advocacy comes, and I know I've brought this up in previous episodes, but there's one uncle that I have of mine. He like lived in the closet for like 30 plus years, like nobody knew. He distanced himself from the family just because he couldn't really show up as his authentic self. So I remember being like, I don't know, I was less than 9 years old when he came out. And I was like, oh, this is why he's never been around. It's because he has never felt that we love him enough to the point that we're going to support him, you know? And ever since that day, even though I was really, really young, I knew like something in my brain just clicked that moving forward, I just needed to respect and advocate for people that were a part of the LGBTQIA community. So of course, I'm not a part of the LGBTQIA community, but I am an ally, and I'm always going to encourage my friends or my families or anyone that I know that has come out to me to, you know, continue showing up for themselves. That makes sense.
Yes, I think your generation and younger, they accept LGBT a lot more.
Yes, for us it's not weird. For us it's not something strange. It's not something different. It's just someone loving another person.
However, in my generation and older and boomers, and you know, when we look at older generation, it was not the norm. It's very taboo.
Yeah.
It's very shameful.
Yes.
It's very embarrassing for families, or a lot of times they will try to force their child to be cisgender. And I think the church has a lot to do with it as well. You know that in the United States, we have the largest religion being Christianity. And so that's a whole nother episode too.
I cannot wait to spill the tea on that one.
But
write it down.
But because of these social constructs that we have, we don't want to be so mean and aggressive in the way that we're sharing the news. So number one, what I would like everyone, or what I would love to remind everyone that I had to learn, was that it is a privilege for people to know the inner journey of your family, your child, yourself as a parent. And so you want to pick out people who you trust. Yes. That trust has to be there in order to share this information. And the second thing that I want to say, which is also kind of conflicting or difficult about this, is we want to speak on behalf of our child because they are not equipped to handle all of the discrimination that adults will put on them.
Yeah, I think that for me, I would say that you also want to kind of educate yourself. You don't want to like start a conversation with your family members knowing that they're not supportive and just be like, yeah, my kiddo is LGBTQIA, but like truly, what does that mean? Like, what does the word means? What does gender mean? What does gender identity mean? So even though you may not know at all, still educate yourself so that you can be prepared to answer other people's questions, because people are very curious, and when they don't support something, they're gonna pick at every single little thing. Second thing I would say is choose a safe space. You don't wanna bring up this topic, especially because it's so sensitive. You don't wanna bring this up in the middle of like an argument or in the middle of a party.
Or in the car,
Yeah, like in the club. Like, you know what? Like, no, like choose a safe space. And make sure, this is very important, and I feel like even though, you know, I'm from a younger generation and I think that I know it all when it comes to LGBTQIA, it wasn't until Haylin continued to say it over and over and over, like, be very selective of what you share because it's not your story.
Right.
You know, it's not your story to share, but like you said, you are showing up for your kiddo. You are showing up for your family member, your friend, you know.
It is challenging. It's a difficult balance. Everyone knows that we have spilled the tea. Everyone knows that, in Hawaii anyway, anyone in my family, my friends, everyone knows about Spill the Tea Cafe and that my child is part of the community. However, we want to be super respectful that, for instance, Matt's journey is Matt's journey. It's actually still evolving.
Yeah.
And so I do not want to share any of Matt's story. That's his story to tell. And I'm willing to share my story as a mom, and Matt's okay with that. And so again, right, really making sure that that relationship is number one with your child, and being able to educate or inform other people if you want to. If you want them to still be in your life, if you want to present these options to them, how would you recommend we, I guess, go about that?
Yeah, well, like I said before, you know, you have to make sure that you choose a safe space, but also make sure that before you are reaching to other people in your family to get your, you know, questions validated or whatever that may be, make sure that your decision of showing up for your kid and being supportive of your kid is already formulated. You know, you don't want to have all this like fog in your brain and go ask Haylin like, oh, my kiddo is trans, like, what do you think I should do? But instead be more like, my kiddo is trans and I support him and I would stand by him
and I'm
regardless.
trying to be better at supporting,
yes,
right? Or something
and
like
I am
that.
trying to be better at supporting. And I've learned that you can also be very supportive by doing this, this, and that. You know what I mean? Just making sure that you're not trying to get your questions validated. Just make sure that you are showing up with already an idea formulated.
Yes. So number one, you do not have to tell people if you don't want to, because it is a privilege for them to know this kind of very deep information that's highly personal. I sometimes feel, like when I talk to Jasper, when I talk to all the kids, it's like, yeah, why do we force them to come out and all that?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's like so personal, right? It would be my dream now that I'm educated about it, that no one ever has to come out.
Yes, I don't come out to my parents and be like, I'm straight. Like, I don't do that.
But that's because you're the majority.
I know, but what I'm saying is that that should be the norm.
Because it's so personal. It's like about your sexuality, your identity. It's so personal that why are we just expecting people to be like, tell me your sexuality, tell me your, you know, it's a very personal journey. And if you can imagine it, just imagining it, how difficult that would be to be born into this world in the wrong body, in the wrong, right? And so we know it's a very rare occurrence. I think it's about 2% of the population that is transgender.
I did not know that.
And about 5 to 10% who's LGBT, right? And again, these numbers are not increasing. It's always been that way. However, people are feeling more safe now to come out, as we know, or I don't know if you know this, but it is really not safe back when I was a child to just come out as transgender.
I mean, I recently met this guy a couple of weeks ago with Marcel. Shout out Marcel. We went to this local gay bar and he was telling us this story about he used to serve in the military, and in 1997, I was just 1 year old, he got kicked out of the army because he said he was gay, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's it. I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
So it's so crazy that because of your sexuality and because who you identify yourself as will cost you your entire career.
And it wasn't a myth, or it was reality.
Yeah.
And so we're still growing as a society. Even in a free country, we're still growing as a society. And I really want to remind people that it is your child's personal information, and we really want to, number one, protect our children with who we share this information with. If you want to share with your family, and it will be a difficult conversation, but you still choose, if you do choose to inform your family about this, you're not sure if they'll be supportive or not, but you do want to provide the information, there's a couple guidelines that we want to share with you. Number one, really looking at that person's neuroplasticity. It's a big word for saying how flexible is this person in their thoughts and in their thinking. If you already know this person
is super fixated and like Trump supporter and like
I won't
super Republican names, and you're white.
But we do have these people, right? And it's not a secret. My entire family, I was born and raised conservative Christian. My entire family is Christian. I love Christians. So I really want to say that. And I still consider myself a spiritual person. And shout out to Pastor Jason.
Shout out.
I love that he can blend Christianity with like Buddhist philosophy and looking at how we all can support each other while still respecting each other's differences. That's something that I'm learning and growing in as well. But to go back to this point of if there's someone where we know they're very black and white in their thinking, they might not be the best person to bring this information to. And if they are that way, you want to protect your child. So safety comes first. And sometimes not talking about this with these type of family members is a way to protect your child. So I think that is very difficult to manage or navigate, but I do want to just put that disclaimer out there. Safety is number one. If this person is not going to be safe physically or psychologically, then we can withhold any kind of information from this person.
Yeah, because we want to avoid to continue traumatizing the kid. You know what I mean? And sometimes what happens with these people that are so black and white, it's that even when you share the information, they will choose to call your child the wrong gender or by their dead name, you know, because they're so fixated in their brain. They don't care anything outside of that. Like it's either black or white by how the Bible says, you know what I mean?
Right, like if you're this way, I don't care. I don't need to have a conversation with you and your child is evil and your child is going to hell.
Yeah.
Maybe not choose to have a conversation.
Yeah. How about I just cut you off?
But I also will touch on that a little bit later where setting boundaries and when it's the best thing to cut people off, because it is very difficult to cut people off. And we don't want to also be black and white in our thinking, right? We don't also want to be like, you're dead to me, because then we're the same as that person. Number one, really looking at the safety. And then after that's been established, trying to have an informal conversation one-on-one. For instance, I might say, hey mom, Maddie is struggling with X, Y, and Z, you know, and I really want to be supportive, and it would be really important to me that like you also could be supportive, right? Maybe I'm talking to my dad or my grandfather, someone that is close to me but may not see things the same way. Then I get this conversation started to what we call put out feelers first, right? And then if they're willing to listen, then I would continue the conversation, right? If they're not willing to listen, then that's when you set boundaries. So can you think of another example of maybe where someone's in the middle, but they're not completely saying, this is wrong and I think that you're a bad parent? Like what other examples can we give?
Well, going back to my uncle, when he came out to the family, my auntie was like, yeah, no, like I can't accept that. And he was like, okay, well, you can't accept that, then you're gonna have to continue living the life where I don't come to the Thanksgiving parties or the holiday parties. And eventually, as the years went by and she continued to get older, she was like, okay, well, you know what? You know, I am super black and white, but because this is my son and I have like, you know, so little time left with him, I am gonna choose not to talk about it, not to address it, so that he can still come around. And actually, my uncle now shows up to the parties with his family. And my auntie, she just won't talk about it. She won't address it. But I feel like she has slowly come down to terms that this is your son and he's gonna continue living that life.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like you said, she won't talk about it, she won't address it. But now I feel like she's, you know, internalizing it and accepting it.
Right.
Unfortunately, like 40 years later.
However, it still is progress for her.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not the best situation for your uncle. Or again, we're just generalizing here, but I really appreciate, you know, Kiki sharing your personal experience with that, because there's a million other stories like that.
Yes, and worse. There's people that have it way worse. I mean,
and when you want to be close to your child, but this is the one thing we don't talk about, I want you to realize that that is at the expense of a real relationship with your child. So yes, you can maybe come around and like have a superficial relationship, if you're okay with that, I'm not here to tell you what to do. Be okay with that and live the rest of your life that way. However, for me and my children, my desire is to have an authentic, genuine relationship with them. And if I don't accept them for who they are, then it will be at the expense of that relationship with that child. I also tell all the parents, not to call them out, but all the parents we work with, I tell them, including myself, we all get a performance review at the end of this journey in terms of being a parent. And it looks like, do they come around after adulthood? Do you see them? Do you hear from them? A lot of parents just expect that I gave birth to you and so you owe that to me. And there's so many kids and young adults who are going no contact right now with their parents for this reason. And it's such a heartbreak to see, because it is really just a misunderstanding of a basic human, I guess, what is it called? The human genome. It's a misunderstanding of how much complexity goes into gender.
I still can't believe that. We're out here thinking that there's only female or male, like really,
and like masculine,
like
masculine,
really, Chad, like really,
super feminine female, like nothing in between as well.
No.
Right? And so we really want to make sure that we're assessing how flexible is this person, and then maybe when your child's coming around, they'll say things like, you're going to go to hell, or you better make sure to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to pray for you. I think you should go to conversion therapy.
Yes.
And all of these things are not acceptable. And it is your job as a parent or as a guardian or even as just a supportive adult to put a stop to that. To expect a child who's 11, 12, 13 to set boundaries and put a stop to that kind of behavior from adults is really unreasonable to expect from a child.
Why would you tell those? Because I know that you went through this. Why would you tell a parent or another guardian like how to answer those challenging questions, but also like how to put a stop to it?
Yes. Number one, you can kind of hear the microaggressions at family dinners or at, let me just tell you about the microaggressions.
Spill the tea! Spill the tea, I've been waiting.
So I'm not
Let me get my Ollie Pop.
I'm not trying to call out anyone. I just want to educate my my friends and family who want to be supportive, who try to be supportive and unintentionally are being detrimental or unintentionally are causing harm. So some microaggressions that I'll share. For one thing, you know, I ran into friends who say, oh my God, like, it's really cool what you're doing at Spill the Tea Cafe, but I can't really believe that you're just letting your kid be trans.
Yeah, it's like the but. Like, it's so unnecessary. Like, it's amazing, but. Like, come on. You know more than that. And it's sad because sometimes this comes from, like, LGBTQIA members. You know what I mean? You would think that they would be the most supportive ones.
It's true. I have a lot of adults who are part of the community and they say, I don't understand these trans kids. Like, it's just, you know, there's like a hierarchy in the whole thing, and it's so sad.
It's like, just because you carry the G doesn't mean that the T is less. You know, like, just because you're gay doesn't mean trans are less.
But again, it's more rare, or it's more uncommon to be transgender. And so we can understand that there's a lack of education. Another thing that I frequently get is
you get a lot.
A lot of things that I frequently get is, oh, you just let your kid do whatever you want, and you know, these kids are so soft, and you're just kind of feeding into that.
That pisses me off. That makes me so mad because, you know, I get it. Like, well, I don't get it. But they don't know the stats and they don't realize the harm that they're doing with this kind of comments. But also, like, what's going behind closed doors with these children when they don't have the support that they need.
Right.
And when they're continuously, you know, getting this hate from the community, from other members, from family, for cousins, you know, they don't quite understand what happens, the consequences of that lack of support.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, what am I talking about? My ADHD.
I don't know. I'll have to review the
podcast. We were talking about some of the things I've experienced.
Yeah. So yes. Good job. High five. Yeah, because I do know that, you know, you've kind of gotten, because I remember, okay, context, you know, when I was Haylin's nanny, I remember being one of the first persons that knew about Matt, and I was like, okay, well, of course, now this is gonna be a family transition, and how can I help Haylin? Because
it was difficult for me.
The difference between her and I is that I'm kind of like Gen Z millennial, but she is millennial.
Or
are
boomer.
you millennial?
Yeah.
Why do we always have this question?
I know.
Shout
I think
out to our
I'm like
producer.
Gen-
He said yes.
I think I'm Gen X. Oh,
No, you're millennial.
I'm like an elderly millennial.
Yeah.
But I was brought up almost like in a boomer house.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
So that's the thing. Like, the difference between Haylin and I is that she had that, like, oh my God, my family's Christian. Oh my gosh, I was raised this way. Where on the other hand, I was like, oh, you're gay, cool. What's next? Can we go on a hike? Can we do something fun? You know what I mean? Like, for me, it wasn't a big deal. For me, it was nothing. But I knew that looked very, very different in Haylin's brain. And it was not my responsibility, but it felt that I really needed to help her row her boat, or else like she was just gonna sink. You know what I mean? Like, with the confusion and the grief and the lack of understanding. But now you understand it so well that it almost feels like now you are educating me on it. You know what I mean?
Well, I did some like ungodly amount of hours of research on this topic.
Yes, many, many books. It's so funny because if you go to Spill the Tea Cafe, you have like, you can see if you go to our library, there's like books of parenting transgender or like understanding transgender kiddos. And like every 2 pages, like there's a post-it note. Like she's just taking notes. And it just, all that to say that it truly does take, a lot of learning, a lot of education, a lot of research to truly understand who you're dealing with and understand your kid. But I do have to say, not everyone has the capacity to do this. And this is what sets you apart as a parent, is that you take out of your time to understand more what your kiddo is going through, but also how can I better myself as a parent?
Right.
Because shit must not be easy.
Well, thank you, Kiki. Kiki's always been supporting me since day one.
I will be your main cheerleader.
However, I will say many parents that I work with and that we speak to, they also have done the same amount of hours of research, because I'm gonna be so real here. It's like we're just trying to say, how can we make our kid not trans? How can we make our kid just be regular so they don't have to deal with all this, right? Like, you do so much research and then you realize that, I'm gonna cry, but like you just realize that they were just born that way, right? And that's it, like that's your kid, like that is who they are. And so I really appreciate Kiki being able to help me drown out all the noise. Like, I wouldn't even let Maddie wear an LGBT shirt to church. Like, it was very hidden, in those early years. And I fight that guilt. That's where the tears come from. But now just seeing my kid like thrive and be who they are, of course it's not perfect. He's still a teenager. So we still have problems day in and day out, but to really understand that a parent is trying their best. And so we just make these like offhanded comments, like I would tell my friends, and some of my really close friends would like start to cry and start to grieve. And it's like, that's not helpful for me right now.
Bitch, why are you crying? Like,
or, saying like this conversation, going back to the conversation of things, asking people nicely and politely, hey, can you please not say like my kid is gonna go to hell? Hey, can you please not say X, Y, and Z? Hey, can you please not misgender my child, right? Saying that over and over and over like really frustrated me. And so what I ended up having to do, which you all might find helpful, is that I had to call a family meeting after many conversations, after feeling out everyone's growth potential and neuroplasticity. And I had to say, like, literally write out, these are the things you can no longer say to Matt. Here are the things you can say. Here are the things you can talk about. You can talk about school. You can talk about, theater. You can talk about whatever, like these things. And we literally wrote it out. And like on this side, these are the things you cannot say. Like, you cannot talk about religion or how he's going to hell or how, you want him to be like a girl in this way, or, like just trying to hype up being a girl. Like, these are the things you cannot do. And I really pray, like I literally said this, I pray that you guys can respect our boundaries, because I love you and I'm so blessed and I want to still be a part of this. And if you cannot respect these boundaries, then I will not be bringing myself, Matt, or any of the kids around anymore. And it was a hard discussion, and I'm so happy to tell you, like, it's been years now, and everybody is accepting of Maddie being a boy.
And I love that because, well, first of all, thanks for sharing. I know you were getting a little emotional there. Thank you for the tissues, but it's amazing that, you know, there are people and parents doing that, because if you don't have that conversation with your family, regardless of how uncomfortable it is, you know, you're not setting the example for your child. And if you're not the first one to do that, then you're telling your kid, oh, it is okay for people not to support you. It is okay for people to disrespect you. But when you choose to show up as their shield, it really makes them feel like, oh, I belong here. This was the way I was born, and I am accepted. I am loved. So you're letting by example. And it's so nice to see your family, like, you know, call Maddie by his correct pronouns and use his name correctly. And, you know, when they buy him clothes, they buy clothes for boys, you know? So it's definitely, you force your family to grow.
Right.
Because, I mean, they either had two options. You either grow with me, or I'm going to cut you off and you're going to see me grow from afar.
Right. And people who have known my family from years ago, right? Like, I've been blessed to have the same friends from like middle school or like high school. And so they've seen a lot of evolution during that time. And it has been hard. It has been hard for everyone. However, I think that the number one thing that I want people to take away from this episode is to allow people time. Allow people time. Like, if they're not supportive right away, I know, like, trust me, even Kiki, like, you get so mad if people are not like supportive right away, but it does require this new learning and new growth, and you have to give time even for your brain to adjust to this new
information.
Right.
And I think I don't get mad when people don't support. Like, I get it. I just get mad when people are so black and white that they won't even allow you the space to truly like explain what's going on, or like they are so black and white that they won't even ask questions to get clarity. You know, like they just choose to put a wall and like
oh, your child's trans, like, oh, too bad, like, you know, like, you're like, oh my god.
Or like when people say like, oh, that's so gay, like, why would you even say that? Like, tell me why. You know what I mean?
And I think the way that you're setting those boundaries is important. I know one thing that I've really set a boundary is when people recommend conversion therapy. Believe it or not, people have recommended conversion therapy to me, which is a very Christian way of trying to force people into being straight. And there's a lot of research. I mean, literally, you can Google it, but there's a lot of abuse there. It's been proven to be contraindicated and really increases the rate of suicide and things like that. So we never want to force anyone.
In case you missed it, we talk about conversion therapy on episode 2 with Marcel. So go check it out.
Right, and it's highly detrimental to your child's well-being. And so we really want to set boundaries around that. But advocating, even in the school, like, how do you advocate for your child, right? Letting them know as early as possible, hey, my child is non-binary, hey, my child identifies as this, and not trying to be annoying to the school, but just to give them a heads up. If there's anything I can do to be an extra support, if there's anything you can do to provide resources like the GSA or, you know, other counselors on staff, things like that. And that's where Spill the Tea really comes in, because we want to be that bridge as well when parents don't know how to advocate for their children. Because believe it or not, trans children are in every single school in the state and in the nation and in the world. So we want to really, and again, there's some obviously parts of the world and country and other things where it's not safe to come out as that. And even in older generations, like, we have experienced many physicians, many professionals, healthcare professionals, who have still not come out, but they're okay with that. And so we're not here to say like one way or the other. That's okay. We all know people who are transgender. We just didn't call them that back then.
Yeah. And like, you know how we're talking about how to answer difficult questions. I think that that comes to mind is that, how do you answer to people when they say shit like, oh, how do you let Matt just be trans?
Yeah, I think I would be really upset in the beginning. Years ago, I would even cry about it. Yeah, you were there. I love the podcast, right? Because you have to be like, so how does it feel? Like, bitch, you were there.
I'm like, I know, I can say this for you.
But at first, I would be so hurt and so offended and like, wow, my friends really just don't respect me or my decisions, and wow, they really think that I'm a bad parent or maybe something's wrong with the way I raised my kid. And through a lot of self-reflection and education, and like I've been able to create a community, well, not me obviously, but the kids have been able to create a community that I've been so blessed to be a part of.
I know.
Where I feel so confident in my decisions because I see all these kids like Matt. I mean, it's so healing, right? And now, instead of crying, what I say is, yes, we support our child. And I wish that you would respect the way that I decide to parent my child, the same way that I respect the way that you parent your child. I also say things like, I appreciate your concern, or it seems like you're concerned. However, I've done many hours of research. I take recommendations from doctors at Stanford, from physicians at Gender Clinic. I take recommendations from other amazing endocrinologists here in Hawaii, and I'll take those recommendations over your recommendation. So I'm okay, and I'm not crying. So you might not say it exactly like that, but I want everyone to go back to what Kiki said in the beginning, where you want to establish where you stand on this issue, first and foremost. I support my kid, and moving forward, right now, I'm not caught off guard by this person saying that and this person, and now I can just, with practice, it's so easy to say, of course I support my child, of course I love my child. I hope that you can respect the way I parent, the same way I respect you.
Period. You really ate that up, left no crumbs.
Or even the protesters. Remember I used to cry?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And now I don't. I just say, I respect your beliefs. I hope you can respect mine, right? But they don't. I mean, they will not allow anyone to be a counselor at their school because it's a Christian school if they work at Spill the Tea Cafe.
Yes.
They will not allow me to come in and do any kind of education with the church. They will not allow us to come into the schools and be a part of our events. They are against
they won't
all
let
of that.
us like table at their events just because
Right.
even though we're providing high quality mental health services to all kiddos in the state of Hawaii, we serve LGBTQIA. So yeah, sorry, you can't really table
them
up.
coming in to our cafe, sometimes trying to like rebuke the devil out of the cafe. And you know, I just want to share that that's very difficult to deal with. And over these years, we've become really strong, and we've become really confident in the way that we are, I guess, delivering these services. And I just want to encourage you, whoever is listening to this, that you also can build that confidence. You also can get rid of that shame and that doubt and that fear the more you get to know these kids for who they are.
Period. That's so sweet.
Yes.
I love you, bestie. You've
I
really
love you
grown a
too.
lot, and I'm so proud of you. And if I was an LGBTQIA kiddo, my dream would truly be to just have a mom like you.
Oh, thank you.
I love you.
And I shout out my mom and my grandma, who've been really strong pillars, women who have also had to grow in their own way. But they've been there since day one, and they've always had nothing but love for Matt. So I want to shout them out as well.
I know, that makes me emotional. If you are a parent or an educator or anyone in the community that would like to know more about how to best work with LGBTQIA plus kids, please feel free to reach out to us via email, info@spilltheteacafe.org. You can also find us online, www.spilltheteacafe.org, or if you're a kid or a parent or whoever that has Instagram, please follow us, spill_the tea cafe. Anything else you'd like to say? We're done.